Hi, Kat here for Lightwave Digital. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to import BioVision files, or BVH, motion capture files, into Lightwave Modeler and into Lightwave Layout so that they can come in as either Skelegons in Modeler or as bones in Layout. Now, the purpose of doing this is that maybe you've got some motion capture data that you want to use, and it's got very particular bone layout, and it's going to be working for you as a structure for a character. So let's get the Skelegons into Lightwave Modeler through importing via the motion capture menu, Skelegons import. And I know that the bone scale factor of the data that came from my old perception neuron suits is too large in terms of scale. So we know that it's going to be a scale of 0.01, and it'll come in perfectly. So the other thing is that I know that these particular files have motion capture data on them, and I want one with a T-pose right off the start, and it's this one in particular. Now, the reason why I want the T-pose is so that it's completely symmetrical, and I can place a character in here and start, mangling the bones in various ways, or the Skelegons in various ways, to fit it up against the mesh. Now, this is brought in, unfortunately, inverted from what you should have for a character bone structure, because you want your right hand, which is currently over here, on the right side, which is completely opposite at the moment. We need to have this rotated, so we're going to hit the Y key, we're going to hit N for the numeric value window to come up. We want the Y-axis, angle, 180 degrees rotation, and we can hit apply, and now we know that this skeleton has been turned around and his bones are in the right spot. Now that we've got something like this, we can place it inside of our character, manipulate the bones. If you want to work with symmetry on to do this, it's probably a good idea, at least initially, while you make changes to this. So we'll hit the symmetry button, and I'm just going to disable the tool there so I can make a selection here. And I can use rotation, move with symmetry, and these bones will move identically across each axis so that I can position it correctly. And we can do the same thing with anything that's in here. See these bones here. Let's say this guy's a little bit bow-legged, or he's some kind of weird animal, and we can do the same in this window here. Any window that you choose will work just fine. If you've got symmetry on, it'll automatically select each side for you. And away you go. And then you can use this to put your orc inside of it, or whatever this might be. All right, now going into Lightwave Layout, very similar operation, but I'm going to point out the difference between doing it in Modeler versus Layout right now. So we can go into our load menu, and we can go import, and we'll find a very similar function called mocap BVH setup. This one will give you the option to have a start frame offset. We don't really need to worry about that unless we want to pick up a particular frame. So we're going to go 0.1 for our bone scale factor. Okay, and we're also going to go and pick our file. I believe this one will work just fine. And it's going to parse through the frames initially. So if you have a very, very large motion capture file, you're going to have to wait for a bit. But this actually comes in, I believe, 1,700 frames worth of motion capture data, even though we don't see the end of it here. That's just because that's my scene default. So this menu is going to pop up if your frame settings that was recorded for the data are different than your Lightwave default frames per second setting. So I am going to choose no, because we want it to run at the proper frames per second, and I get my motion capture data in here. Now, ignore this. This is an error from the data file. However, I am going to point out that this comes in with the BVH data under a null labeled BVH mocap master 1. Okay, and then we have these other objects or bones in here, but they're not activated. Now, why is that? Well, in this particular situation, the motion capture files were generated by a system that required these gimbal bones to be in here, and they're not active. And as a result, when imported into Lightwave Modeler, they don't show up or register, so they come up with just the actual active bones. So none of these bones that are not active in the BVH file will come into Lightwave Modeler, which is actually a good thing because you don't really want those extra bones. You can place gimbals later if you need to in your own rig if you're going to use a mocap skeleton for rigging a character in Modeler or Lightwave. So just for fun here, we're going to play through this. And one of the things I want you to note is that this character immediately jumps up a little bit, and that is on the first frame. And unfortunately, this scale with this particular model, when I was exporting on the suits, I was testing out different scales to figure out which one should be which. And I screwed up the data itself. So let me go and re-import a good one. So we're going to clear that. Go import, just for practice here. Actually, we'll take it to 0.01. Let's try this one. Okay, it's going to parse through the motion capture frames. Hit no. And we'll notice that this one doesn't have a T-pose right off the bat, which is why I used the other one in Modeler, because I wanted the T-pose. But this one comes in and it has the motion capture on there. And it has, as I was saying before, it immediately on frame 1 jumps up. And the reason for that is just because of the way that the motion capture data system from those suits positioned the origin after the first frame. And that's all that is. But now I have a motion capture file that can have a character bolted onto it and be used as an animation base.